Good evening. The December 12th regular meeting of the Evanston City Council will come to order. Will the clerk please take the roll?
Councilmember Newsma.
Here.
Mayor Biss.
Here.
Councilmember Burns.
Here.
Councilmember Sufferton cannot be here tonight. His children are sick. Councilmember Ravel.
Here.
Councilmember Reed. Councilmember Heracariz.
Here.
Councilmember Kelly.
Here.
Councilmember Harris.
Present.
Councilmember Nguyen.
We have a quorum present and are prepared to do our work. The first item on our agenda is my public announcements and proclamations, of which there are none. You're welcome. The next item on the agenda is the city manager's public announcements.
Good evening, Mayor. No announcements tonight.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is communications from the city clerk.
We did get a few emails. I did forward them. Other than that, there's no announcements.
Thank you very much. This brings us now to public comment. We have a very full public comment of around 25 people have signed up, so everyone will be given 2 minutes this evening. We begin, as always, with those who signed up in person to speak in person, beginning with John Lernberger, followed by Chip Ratliff, and then Michael Neighbors. Is John Lionberger there? Oh, please come forward, and you have 2 minutes for your public comment.
Well, that certainly went faster than I expected. Thank you for the time to speak to you. I am John Lionberger. I'm a pretty lifelong resident of Evanston, and I'm here to speak on behalf of Bookends of Beginnings. I have heard that the council has voted down ARPA funds, and I'm here to ask you to reconsider that, in large part because, well, we are the host to a world-class Tier 1 university, and I think Evanston deserves a Class 1, Tier 1 bookstore, which Bookends and Beginnings has been, I think, from its inception. It is a gathering place, and it funnels people out into other businesses in the community. They also seem to tick all the boxes on getting the kind of funding that would help them. Woman-owned, forced out by rent, et cetera, et cetera. And in the past, before COVID hit, they were expanding. So I can't see from my vantage point how this could you could stand in the way of voting them the kind of ARPA money to help them thrive and help the community thrive. And so in conclusion, I'm asking the council to think we have been in big problems with COVID, and I'm hoping the council will think big in terms of helping organizations that really, really need the help and will help this community prosper. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Chip Ratliff, who will be followed by Michael Neighbors and then Dino Robinson.
Good evening, members of the board. Sorry, members of the city council. I'm so sorry. My name is Chip Ratliff. I am the president of the board of directors of Shorefront. I'm supported by many members of our board here now and people online and all over. I'm here to just basically say that Shorefront is a necessary part of Evanston, and it should be supported, therefore, by Evanston, the city of Evanston. There should be a line item approved annually for Shorefront. Shorefront is not only just an organization, it is a way of life. It is something that the black community needs and wants. And I know I don't have a lot of time. I could sit here for hours talking about Shorefront, but Shorefront is a necessity, and it should be treated that way by the by the City Council of Evanston. I'm so sorry, board of directors, right? By the City Council of Evanston. I think that's all I have to say right now, but thank you so much for allowing me to say that. I hope that you all agree with me. You all vote accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Michael Neighbors, who will be followed by Dino Robinson and then Ray Friedman.
Mayor, City Manager, City Clerk, and council persons, good evening. This is literally the quickest that I've been up for public comment, so it is amazing how you are moving with rapidity tonight. I want to speak on two particular issues, but one in particular has to do with Clarence and Wendy Weaver. I am delighted to share that I have known the Weavers much longer than my time in Evanston, which has only been 7 years, but I've had the opportunity to know them for 19 years. And I am delighted to share with you that they are a dedicated couple. I'm not sure that I know many who have shown more dedication to the city of Evanston and particularly to the Fifth Ward. We go back a long ways. Their late son, CJ, and my twin sons were both dear friends from the time they were in high school, and they ran around together, even though we lived in Michigan at the time. And I just have to share with you that I had a Marauder, even though I was a preacher. That is a demon of a car. It's a speed car, a Mercury. And my sons, I let them have it at about 17. They picked up CJ over here, and I understand that they were going exponentially over the speed limit on 94. So we have that kind of background and friendship. And I do want to say that I believe that they are poised and prepared to bring excellence, a great deal of excellence, more excellence to the Fifth Ward on Church and Dodge. So we hope that you will consider them as being viable purchasers of the property that belongs to the city right now, which is Gibbs Morrison. I also want to say that I'm a dear friend of Dino Robinson, and as has been said by Chip, Shorefront Legacy is absolutely essential for the Evanston community, not just for the black community, but the entire community as well. The entire nation knows about Shorefront now because of its work that has been done with reparations. So please, whatever you can do for that organization will be a great blessing. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Dino Robinson, who will be followed by Ray Friedman.
Good evening, council members, and thank you for this opportunity. And I want to specifically thank this council, not this current seating, but in spirit. Shorefront started because of what a council movement did back in 1997 and funding Shorefront through the Cultural Fund in the amount of $7,500. This is when we were just an initial think tank group, bunch of people from the community who wanted to do something good for the community. But it launched what we are today as Shorefront. And one thing that we had aspired to do, which I think we're finding some success in, is our vision is making local history common knowledge. And I believe we did that over the last 25 years. When we did a search 20 years ago in Google or Yahoo, whatever search engine used at the time, if you Googled local black history, you might have found 1 or 2 mentions within the first 3 pages. Today, if you do it, we'll fill up the first 3 pages. Not only are we an asset for this community here, but also for the greater Chicago metropolitan area, which the general historical narrative in the Midwest always centers around the south side of Chicago. Now it includes Evanston and the North Shore. And third, our influence with the community nationwide. There is a big community of community-based archives that usually go unheard of or unrecognized. Shorefront has been a leading model for all of that, and I found myself speaking in various venues in UCLA in California, Tulane in New Orleans, the SHIFT movement that brings together local historical organizations, Northwestern University, the Schomburg in New York, Harvard University, and lastly, the National Museum of African American History and Culture. We've been extremely influenced, and there are many communities that wish we had a Shorefront. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Ray Friedman.
Good evening once again, everyone. Looks like you're planning to vote on the budget tonight, which has gone from $402 million to $400 million to $390 million to a new total today of $395 million. I wonder how we got there. With no further discussion from residents and never finishing the budget hearing that council members spoke about on October 24th. Your residents deserve to know where our money is going and why. In the last 6 years I've lived here, we've doubled our general obligation bond debt from $100 million to over $200 million, costing taxpayers about $15 million a year. That's $1.2 million per month. I understand today that we're spending, I forgot what the total payment is for, but it's astronomical, $28 million in payments. I'd like to know what other community has $200 million in general obligation bond debt. Property taxes are up pretty much across the board, 25%. I was reading that buying a home is unaffordable now for about 26 million households, after rates rose this year from 3.2% to about 6.4%. And 37% of real estate agents in the U.S. could not afford to pay rent. But you are proposing to borrow another $17 million in general obligation bonds next year and increase our budget by $35 to $40 million from
15 seconds.
2022 to 2023, after we received $44 million from ARPA funds. I thought the plan for reparation funds was supposed to come from cannabis sales. And what is the plan for distributing those millions of dollars other than
Time.
real estate improvement plan? Lastly,
Your time is up, sir.
I understand. Let me have 4 more sentences, please. And lastly, why weren't residents involved in the meeting for city goals 2 days ago? And the way I heard about it was through
Thank you very much.
Evanston Now.
Thank you
Okay.
very much. We'll now move to those who signed up online to speak in person, of whom there are just a few. The first is James Lesmeister, who will be followed by Laurice Bell and then Annette Logan. Is James Lesmeister here? If not, then we'll move on with Laurice Bell, who will be followed by Annette Logan.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm here to speak on behalf of Shorefront. Shorefront was founded in 1995. Up until 1995, there was no repository nor archive for Black history. We're coming up on the 20-year anniversary due to dedicated and extraordinary work from Shorefront, its volunteers, and Dina Robinson. We have a proud and engaged community that makes a difference to the lives of all of our Black people who have not been recognized. Shorefront fills a void in archiving Evanston's history because prior to 1995, we were not included. It has a historic significance beyond Evanston and goes deep into the African American experience, nation and worldwide. Let's make this jewel in Evanston and the North Shore stand out with funding, and let's support our own Shorefront legacy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Annette Logan. My understanding is she is not here to speak, and so we now move to the
Mayor, I apologize. I had signed, this is Mary Rosensky. I had signed up, but I may have, when I put it through, it may have gone to a different committee. I'm not sure.
Nope, you're on the list.
But
I was just about to move on to the online public commenters.
I'm sorry.
No, not at all. But you're certainly on that list, so I'll admit you're a ways down that list, but we will get to you, I promise. So the first speaker this evening is Tina Payton, who will be followed by Priscilla Giles and then Carlos Sutton.
Good evening. My family being here for over 100 years in the same home on an important block here in Black history. Of course, I am not against reparations. With all the decades of harassment, lawsuits, and discrimination the city has cast upon my family, we should get $10 million alone. I object to the $2 million and the $5 million that the Reparations Committee is seeking today, unless the following happens. 1, you need money should be in a bank in an interest-bearing account. 2, no non-for-profit should be involved in distributing money or holding money. 3, all money should be combined, donated, weed sales, and city funded, and then you can report it to the public as a whole monthly. Income and expenses reported quarterly. Third parties should oversee the money. Cash payments, as Attorney Nick Cummings said, he stated he found a way. Open applications. Mayor should discuss his relatives getting cash payments as he's done at other meetings. All recipients' names and amounts should be public. I know at least 2 of the first 16 people don't have a house and don't plan on buying a house. How did they receive their reparations money? People need to start going to jail without proper accounting for this money. Stop using our suffering for your gain. Where is the money coming from for all of these parties and events such as the Orrington, the high school, museums, churches, and traveling around the world? Also, I find it very strange.
15
what happened
seconds.
to the $500,000 in ARPA money for the small to medium landlords that was supposed to be on today's agenda, which was passed in committee 8-0? More discrimination. Black landlords matter. Stay woke.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Priscilla Giles, who will be followed by Carlos Sutton and then Mike Vasilko.
Thank you for the opportunity to express my opinion about taking funds from the general fund of the city of Evanston for reparations. Please vote no. Everyone who pays real estate taxes, sales taxes, parking, and any other city tax contributes to the general fund of Evanston. This includes the Black people for whom reparations is due, although there is not or may not be enough money in the city of Evanston to repay for all the redlining that existed before 1920, the official beginning, and continues to this day in the name of open housing and affordable housing, which is not affordable for the low-income population of Evanston, many of whom are fifth-generation residents. It appears that we Black people are paying for our own reparations. Please vote no for this insult to Black people reparation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Carlos Sutton, who will be followed by Mike Vasilko and then Lindsay Bosch. Mr. Sutton, are you in the
Good
Zoom?
evening.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm Sutton.
no
Good
problem. Go
evening,
ahead.
Mayor Biss, City Manager, and council members. I want to first approve of the comments made by Ms. Payton and Mrs. Giles as they expressed some of the concerns. I just want to add to that I think that we ought to emphasize our priorities and accountabilities in the distribution of funds in this city. Small landlords, especially like the 2 previously mentioned and residents, have contributed to paying property taxes in this city for over 100 years. And yet, when it comes time to distribution, there's no accountability of what funds are available for distribution. And I'm adamantly opposed to a not-for-profit being involved in the distribution of reparation funds. Secondly, it was discussed that small landlords like myself and Mrs. Payton would receive some kind of restitution for the 3 years we did not receive payments from tenants. We could not get access to courts for conviction, but yet we continued to pay our taxes and were good citizens in this city. Why are we being punished for being good citizens? Why are you taking the money and distributing it in other areas without the commitment that you made to saying that we would be adequately reimbursed for our sacrifice? I thank you for the opportunity to make these reports, and I'm adamantly against any ARPA funds being distributed to entrepreneurs. But I would like to see Shorefront supported. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Mike Vasilko, who will be followed by Lindsay Bosch and then Amy Golden.
Thank you. First, I want to thank, I believe it was Councilmember Burns, who suggested for item A14 that in lieu of rejecting the grant from MWRD, that they bring representatives from MWRD to the council to explain the issue of toxic material being handed out as fertilizer to farmers locally and in Evanston and across Illinois. So thank you for that. I've noticed, Councilmember Nuisma, that there's no new dollars associated with climate action in the revised budget. I hope you're going to speak to that tonight. I agree with several of the previous speakers about what I added up to be $8 million of funding now being presented tonight for reparations. $1 million from the transfer tax, which I think was discussed previously at council meetings, and in large part I have no problem with. But then there's $2 million from a general fund being transferred for reparations, and another $5 million of ARPA funds being transferred for reparations, both of which I don't think are legal or constitutionally legal, because you're taking money, federal money and local taxpayer money, and devoting it to one community, which I don't think is legal. So that should be checked before this is approved.
15 seconds.
I don't agree with approving it. Also in the budget, well, my last 15 seconds, I also want to weigh in on the Bookends request. They received $82,000 compared to C&W Market, which received $560,000. I think it's totally disproportionate, and I think unfair to Bookends to be minimized in that way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Lindsay Bosch, who will be followed by Amy Golden and then Janet Alexander Davis. I think Lindsay Bosch just joined the Zoom. Lindsay Bosch, are you available to give your...
Forgive me, I was booted and now I'm here. Thank you. My name is Lindsay Bosch, and I'm a homeowner in the seventh ward for 8 years, and I'm also a parent of a 3-year-old Evanstonian. I want to offer my voice and remarks today to attest to the value of Shorefront to all of Evanston residents across backgrounds, across wards, and whether we are longtime generational residents or newcomers to the city. Shorefront's work is deeply valuable to asserting this city's sense of unique place, and an important resource for those of us who are seeking to educate our children and ourselves about the full history of our home. As so many of us know, our children build their knowledge of their world through stories. It's through stories that they understand their location, their place in history, and better understand themselves. We're so very lucky to have a place like Shorefront that's deeply rich in historic storytelling, to preserve and to hold and to uphold the stories we need to know to ground ourselves in this place. Shorefront's devotion to the personal, to the everyday stories of Evanston's history is particularly unique and valuable for our city and all of our ongoing education. All the written civic histories you can access might not hold a candle to the experience of standing in front of the delicate stitching of a nearly century-old debutante dress held in that institution's archive, and the story that that dress tells of the vibrant life of its owner. As a communicator and a mother, I value the way that Shorefront is the keeper of history in the forms and in the narratives that have the most impact on education and on public understanding. I also want to point out that this city's support and championing of Shorefront's work is also deeply visible outside of Evanston. When the New York Times and Bloomberg Press and the national ABC News run coverage of this city's reparations work, it's Shorefront they turn to understand the history and the context of our town. This work is deeply impactful locally, but also important to recognize that its unique work is a model nationally and internationally for our city. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Amy Golden, who will be followed by Janet Alexander Davis and then Arthur Ward. Is Amy Golden in the Zoom? All right, we'll come back to her then. The next speaker is Janet Alexander Davis, who will be followed by Arthur Ward and then Rose Cannon. Ms. Davis?
Good evening, elected City Council. My name is Janet Alexander Davis, born in the city of Evanston in 1943 and still live here in the West End Area Block Club neighborhood of the 5th Ward. I am honored to write to you in support, and I did send it in writing by email to hopefully everyone, support of Shorefront to receive funding for its value to our community for over 25 years. The contributions from this organization have been unique and not represented by any other. Dino's deep dive into the research of African American history from the North Shore communities through Chicago is one to support. One of the reasons we have the first ever reparations program from a United States municipality was generated by Shorefront's work revealing the unfair action by others, city administrations, not allowing my family to live here, buy property here, and be told how long they could stay in the town laws. Because of Shorefront, Evanston, Illinois is talked about not only in the United States, but around the world. Surely, after years of offering programming to others about the lives of Black people, providing the history of Blacks in Evanston, for providing a well-organized history of a people for generations to come, must be supported by adding a line item to the city's discretionary budget line to Shorefront. The bottom line in all of these years, Shorefront has rarely asked the city for help. Isn't it time to say yes to their requests? Yours respectfully, Janet Alexander Davis. I live at 1726 Leland Avenue, Evanston, Illinois. 5th Ward resident and proud of it. And my family has lived in Evanston since the 1930s, and we lived off and on Leland since 1948. Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Arthur Ward, who will be followed by Rose Cannon and then Kevin Brown.
Hello, Evanston. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I just have 3 questions. First of all, how is Evanston reparations considered successful when only 16 people have received home improvements in the name of reparations? How do new windows and roofs close the wealth gap? And how is a $25,000 bank loan for a mortgage considered reparations? Second, if the $25,000 reparations allotment is not used up fully, where does the remaining money go? Because we know the recipient does not receive the excess. And thirdly, why does the city of Evanston allow the Evanston Reparations Committee to hold public meetings billed as town halls when residents are never allowed to speak? Why does the city of Evanston allow the Reparations Committee to hold public meetings on weekdays at 9 a.m. when that time is not accessible to the public they are here to serve? And absolutely lastly, I don't believe or think that any nonprofit should be involved in the distribution of reparations funds. That includes any nonprofit, and that includes NARC, Cobra, and First Repair. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Rose Cannon, who will be followed by Kevin Brown and then Mary Rosinski.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor Biss and City Council members. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. My name is Rose Cannon, and I am a founding member of the grassroots coalition called Evanston Rejects Racist Reparations. I'm here tonight to speak on the issue of funding for our restorative housing program, so incorrectly and inappropriately named reparations. I would ask you to vote no on the transfer of any funds from our general fund of tax into the reparations fund. We have the cannabis tax, which is already transferring. We also have, and I've lost count actually, maybe 4 to 5 silos of private money standing ready and held by the Evanston Community Foundation. Tap those funds of money before you take money out of the general fund to fund reparations. And I want to say one thing, another thing. I am a Black foundational American, tracing my lineage back to chattel slavery. And I lived in the 5th Ward of Evanston between the years 1919 and 1969. And I am deemed an ancestor of the most advanced age range. I suffered housing discrimination. I did not apply for this program because it is not true reparations, and it does not heal or close the racial wealth gap. However, many of my Evanston friends and neighbors who are likely sitting and listening to this right this moment, both ancestors and descendants, approximately 500 people have filed applications for the restorative housing program benefit of $25,000, and they have been assigned ranked numbers. They stand ready and willing to receive their benefit. My ask is twofold. My ask is twofold. First, please honor your promise to fund the remaining folks who have applied and already been assigned numbers. Second, I ask the City Council to pause or suspend the further development of this program beyond this restorative housing phase. I believe the next phase being proposed is an entrepreneurial program. If the program goes forward into other phases, I ask the City Council to allow transparent access to all citizens, to all planning stages in this program, should this go forward. Pay the remaining applicants, then pause, reevaluate, and redo this program as you promised earlier when it was first incepted. Thank you
very much.
I rest.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Kevin Brown, who will be followed by Mary Rosinski and then Robin Rue Simmons.
Good evening, Mayor and elected officials. My name is Kevin Brown. I live in the 9th Ward. I've been connected to the Evanston community for more than 40 years. I am also one of the founding members of Evanston Rejects Racist Reparations, which supports the national reparations movement, but stands opposed to programs like Evanston that have renamed housing programs as reparations. I'm speaking this evening to raise several issues regarding the reparations items on the agenda. First, there is an obvious conflict of interest with Robin Rue Simmons chairing the Reparations Committee or being on the committee itself. Rue Simmons is operating a business that relies upon financial decisions made by the council and has publicly lobbied the council without being a registered lobbyist. If Mayor Biss launched a math company and sat on a city committee that recommended city spending for the purchase of such products so that he could gain an advantage in the national marketplace, people would say that is an obvious conflict of interest. That is what is happening with the city's so-called reparations program with Ms. Rue Simmons chairing that committee. Ms. Rue Simmons presents the Evanston program in forums across the country, and her company uses that information to secure consulting contracts. That would not be an issue except for her position as chair of the Reparations Committee and her active lobbying of Evanston elected officials to provide funding to the Evanston program to secure credibility for her efforts.
15 seconds.
The legality of this arrangement is questionable, but it is definitely unethical. Second, expending ARPA money to help Black Evanstonians would be a good thing. I support Shorefront, the Weavers, and small Black landlords. But to align those funds that would be open to any Evanston resident to a program called reparations is not reparations. It is yet another city social program. Finally,
thank you very much.
What the city has engaged in the name of reparations should really be called token reparations. As structured, the Evanston program is not engaged in repair. It is only making a token gesture to address only a small aspect of the horrific harms imposed upon Black Evanstonians. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Mary Rosinski, who will be followed by Robin Ruth Simmons and then Antonia Edwards.
Thank you. There's been a lot of interesting comments tonight. I would ask you to listen to Mr. Friedman. I think his point about the numbers is 100% right, and the community deserves answers, and numbers are going all over the place. I came to talk about the special order of business. I'm very concerned about how this whole thing with the Fleetwood Jourdain is being presented, as if the community hasn't really had a discussion. There was a meeting the other night, I realized, but we're talking about a Evanston Community Center that we just spent $1 million in. And the last thing we need, in light of all the money that we're spending in this town without planning, is a plan. The Wilmette plans 10 years ahead of time for the projects and things they're going to be doing in their park district, and I think we could do the same. But what I'm most concerned about is the district school was voted on, and it's fine. But then all of a sudden, they take 70% of our tax dollar, and now all of a sudden, our community center is being pulled into this project, and this is just not good planning. And like the animal shelter, next thing you know, this is going to be, well, we talked about it, and then the community said, et cetera, but there were really no real open meetings for all the community, 8th Ward, 3rd Ward, 1st Ward, everybody together saying, is this what we're doing? And did it go to Parks and Rec? And I think that there are other options. When staff presents something, these are the 4 options from our consultant, I'm like, well, there's other options. There's an option of a land swap. There's the option of working with Family Focus. There's many other options than the 4 that are in this thing. And we cannot go into a narrow tunnel vision, and we can least of all afford another Robert Crown financial fiasco. We can't be taking out more bonds and debts and building a new community center.
15 seconds.
So anyway, that's what I want to say is listen to the people, have real transparent meetings, and go by a plan. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Robin Ruth Simmons, who will be followed by Antonia Edwards and then Saskia James.
Thank you, Mayor Biss. This is Robin Ruth Simmons, 5th Ward resident, born and raised. I'm calling tonight to support Shorefront Legacy, the work founded and operated by Dino Robinson. Obviously, I have nothing but praise, appreciation, and compliments for the work, the significance, the value in Evanston, and the example that Shorefront has set nationally and even internationally. And evidence of that would be my very last order of business as a city councilwoman in naming a street for Dino in honor of his work. So I'm asking and joining with all the others in support, countless that have not been able to make this call, that the council does support Shorefront Legacy Center as recommended on today's agenda. Additionally, I want to support Councilmember Burns and his amendment for reparations. Separate from any ARPA discussion, I am actually withdrawing support for ARPA dollars for reparations, but I am in full support and appreciation for Councilmember Burns' creativity in making sure that, as others have mentioned on this call, we are able to fund those that have applied for reparations, prioritizing our seniors with urgency. So I want to add that support there. And then lastly, independent of any role on committee, as a resident and now international reparation supporter, I want to say that Evanston has in fact been recognized nationally. There is much press on reading about it. There was recently a convening here in Evanston that was attended by local leaders in every region of this nation. Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, our own Congresswoman Jan Jakowski, attended in support as well. And I want Evanston to know that you can learn more about that. The Roundtable has done fair coverage of it. And First Repair is independent of any work that I do for the city of Evanston. And there are more information if you're interested at our website. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Antonia Edwards, who will be followed by Saskia James and then Dylan Smith. Is Antonia Edwards in the Zoom? Looks like no. In that case, the next speaker is Saskia James, who will be followed by Dylan Smith and then Elizabeth Lucia. It looks like Saskia James is also not in the Zoom at this time, so we'll move on to Dylan Smith, followed by Elizabeth Lucia.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dylan Smith, and council members, thank you for allowing me the time to speak today. I'm the Business Development Manager for WorkSpeed Executive Assistant Solutions. We were founded in 2013 by our CEO and visionary, Kenzie Biggins. We're a minority, woman-owned and led company. We focus on providing exceptional virtual administrative solutions to organizations and leaders throughout the United States. We consistently drive to develop and deliver key resources to both our executive assistants and leaders they support. Through this, one of our core focuses is to both elevate and standardize the entire industry. So through this, our executive assistants come pre-vetted, interviewed, and screened with an average of 10 years of experience. And another thing that really sets us apart is our admin roadmap process that a few of the council members have already experienced. Through this, we're able to identify and pinpoint our customers' unique administrative needs. And using both this and our in-depth pairing process, we're able to pair leaders and their executive assistants based on their specific needs and communication style, not just based on the specific tasks or needs at hand. One thing that, again, sets us apart is our service model is based on a fractional hours model, unlike traditional hiring, which is based on reoccurring set hours. We use an active hours model that means you have dedicated availability from an executive assistant during normal working hours, but they're only clocked in and active when they're actually providing support. Through our admin roadmap process, we think we've identified a few key areas that we think an executive assistant would be able to help the city council members. This includes supporting
15
the
seconds.
creation. This includes supporting the creation of ward newsletters, which allows for both consistent and regular community updates, as well as email management to help with faster response times and calendar support, which will help assistants with scheduling meetings.
You can finish the sentence. It's okay.
Awesome. This will help with scheduling meetings and other important community events. Through this support in all these areas, we think it will really allow council members more time to focus on key issues and legislative matters. Thank you for the time and consideration and allowing to speak today, council members.
Thank you.
Point of information.
Just
point of information for the gentleman who's here. We're likely going to discuss this during the budget discussion, so people may call on you then for questions, so you don't leave too early.
I'll stay right here, thank you. And Elizabeth Lucia is actually with me as well. She's not here, so you can feel free to skip her.
Got it. Okay. So the next speaker was going to be Elizabeth Lucia. She is, I guess we just heard what she would have said. So that concludes our online public comments, but now Annette Logan, who had signed up to speak in person, is here. So our final speaker will be Annette Logan.
Good evening. I'm here in support of Shorefront. I am a long-term board member, or have been, and Shorefront is just awesome. It's not going away. I was part of the, I think when we first started, when I joined the board, we were housed at Family Focus. So going through negotiations with trying to find a location, a permanent location, and we were really excited when it actually became an actual legacy center over at the church. Dino and I met at his place when I wanted to write for Shorefront. So he was always saying, yes, I can't pay you, but please write a story. And I did that, and I got really excited about all the work that Shorefront has done and is doing. So that's why I'm here. Give them whatever they want. Oh, and thank you for is it the day for Dino, or is I got part of the story. Is it a holiday for Dino? Is it?
I mean, I can't speak to whether you have to go to work that day.
Oh, okay,
but
okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes public comment for this evening. Thanks so much to all for participating. That brings us to special orders of business. The first item, SP1, is just a discussion, but would someone like to make a motion to initiate that?
Mr. Mayor, I move item SP1, discussion of the Fifth Ward School and the Community Center.
Second.
So there's been a motion and a second to discuss the Fifth Ward School and Community Center update. Ms. Biggs, I believe you have some information for us.
I do. Just getting our presentation together. There we are. My name is Laura Biggs. I'm the city engineer for the city of Evanston, and tonight I'm here to discuss an update on the Fifth Ward School / Community Center project that we've been working with on District 65. So, District 65, basically earlier this year in March, approved building a new Fifth Ward school at a location which they, at the time, I believe they had thought that it was going to be at Foster Field, but they did not really discuss that very much. And they issued the lease certificates. They approved issuing lease certificates to pay for the funding of it. The way that their programming worked was they bus a lot of students, and so once they built the Fifth Ward School, which would be walkable for a lot of the students that were being bused, they could stop busing students, and the cost of the busing saved would pay for the debt service, essentially, or these lease certificates that would build the school. And they estimated the cost at $40 million. There was not a lot of discussion with the city up front. The city staff realized that the Fifth Ward School had been approved, and we reached out and started conversations with District 65. So we met on April 8th, and when we saw the plan, there were a lot of concerns that came up because it is being built on Foster Field, which is an important green space for the Fifth Ward community and is integral to the programming that we offer at Fleetwood Jourdain Community Center. We spent the summer going through a couple of options with the school district. We decided that would be most helpful is if we worked together and we actually had their consultant on board helping us as well. And so then we came to the City Council, and on August 8th, the City Council approved a memorandum of understanding with the school district and also entered into an agreement with the consulting firm and the city so that we could have consulting services for our own needs as well. So since then, we have been working with the school district to do a variety of conversations with both them, and we've been working with Family Focus to better understand what their mission is well. On December 6th, which was last week, we had a community meeting where there were some options introduced for what could be done with the site in order to make it more useful and helpful, make a better school and make a better community center. And then we have issued a survey to the community to try to get their feedback on what their interests are for the community center long term, as well as the potential site layouts. And we will bring those recommendations. We will get that information, we'll sort of distill it, and we hope to come back on January 9th to the City Council with some recommendations. But meanwhile, I would actually like to keep going and talk in more detail. So what's driving this, though, right now, and this fairly short schedule that we're trying to work to, is District 65 has a really tight schedule because they've issued the lease certificates and essentially their funding is started. They are already paying debt service or paying back some of the cost of the funding. And in order to get through that, they need to have the school open by fall 2025. It takes 18 months to build a school if everything goes perfectly. Lately, things have been challenging in the construction field. There's been a lot of supply chain issues, so they're naturally concerned about that. And they actually, because they've been working with us, they still haven't actually located the building or done any real design on the building. So they want to break ground in August of next year. So their schedule is very tight, which is why we are trying to be extremely prompt in how we make decisions, because we want to support that. So first, I'd just like to mention, we did a lot of discussions with District 65, but also with Family Focus to try to understand the services and programming that everybody offers. There are a lot of tenants at the Family Focus building, so we tried to get a good understanding of what their needs were as well for space, for outdoor use, an outdoor space, and also what everybody's parking is. There's a lot of this site that ultimately is proposed to be parking, which is great, because if we don't have it, then that parking is going to end up in the neighborhood and be a negative impact to the neighborhood. But we also want to be smart and not overpopulate it with the site with asphalt if it's not needed. And I want to cover quickly just the property ownership we're talking about. So in all of these slides, north is to the right and east is to the bottom of the slide. So the purple here is at the top of the slide is the Family Focus property. The light blue underneath that is the City of Evanston property where Fleetwood Jourdain is located, and you can kind of see the shaded footprint of the buildings. And then the yellow part is the property that's owned by District 65. It was leased to the City of Evanston for a nominal fee. That lease expired in May of this year, and they have notified us, of course, that they're not planning on continuing the lease. They have owned all of this property, well, all of the city property and the yellow property were owned by District 65 since the early 1900s. And in 1954, we acquired the property from them so that we could build Fleetwood Jourdain. But they have owned this property for a very long time. And there's not a lot of open space in Evanston where they really have an opportunity to just all of a sudden build a school. Since they own this property, it was a huge cost savings to them, and it is nice for them from the standpoint that it is in the center of the ward, so it's pretty closely situated. So it is a good location for a school. The unfortunate thing is how much Fleetwood Jourdain uses that property, the Foster Field property, for programming and to support our summer camps and our after-school programs. This site is the option one that we've been showing people, and it is very similar to what was originally presented to us on April 8th. It shows Simpson Street along the right side, that's the north end, and then the school is bounded up against Simpson Street and along Ashland Avenue. There's a small green space in the middle of their property and then the parking. This builds their school entirely on their property. It leaves the Fleetwood Jourdain Community Center as is. So it costs the city relatively little to pursue this option, but the negative impact of not having the green space, both for our options, but also for the community and for Family Focus, is very real. One of the problems with this is that the building is so large and is built so closely to the street in order to be able to fit everything on their existing property that it would require the removal of all the trees on Ashland and all the trees on Simpson. They might be able to have enough space to replant some of them, but it's definitely very challenging. This property would also require a lot of major zoning variations for building height and for setbacks, for various things. And you can see the size of this building. This blue building is the proposed school. This is the massing diagram. If you are familiar with this area, there's a multi-story church next door. That's the white buildings that are shown to the right of the blue building. The buildings across the street. And you get a real sense of how this 3 to 4 story building that's built right up against the sidewalk where it is now really has an overpowering effect on the neighborhood. And this is, of course, of concern to the staff as they look towards trying to help the school build something that minimizes the negative impacts that could occur. 4 stories is the height of the Civic Center, but the Civic Center is sent back from the street, roughly 50 to 80 feet. And so you can imagine that if the Civic Center were right up against the sidewalk, what it would be like walking down Ridge Avenue. So with that, we worked with them to develop other options for how we could maintain a green space that could be shared by all of us. And the school district has actually indicated that if we do that, they're willing to dedicate it as well as Foster Park that the city maintains ownership of. And you can see that this option pushes the buildings to the north and to the east along Ashland, but it maintains a large green space in the center, and that green space would be shared by all. So this has a lot of advantages for us and would allow us to use the space very much like we do now, which it would require that the Fleetwood Jourdain building be reconstructed along the east edge of the site. There's a similar option that also maintains a green space, but it pushes both the new school and the Fleetwood Jourdain reconstructed building down to the southern 2/3 of the property and maintains a green space on Simpson, which is similar in size to Foster Field, but is smaller. And one of the challenges with this particular layout is that it would require us to demolish the existing center before we construct the new center. However, it does move the really tall building impact further away from the neighborhood and from its neighbors. And then we have a site option 4 that we also developed, and there's a 4A that goes with it, that actually moves the Fleetwood Jourdain Center to a nearby site, which is Gilbert Park, that allows for the largest green space to be maintained around the school. Now, one of the advantages and one of the reasons why the city staff has been so interested in this is the green space is also not really just supporting Fleetwood Jourdain, but it's also making the school a better school. And so this actually has a big advantage for the school. Fleetwood Jourdain would be relocated to the existing Gilbert Park property, but we would also have to acquire some additional properties. 4A is actually just a change in how the school building appears on the site. So in this 4, it's appearing on the south 2/3 of the property. 4A, it's appearing along Simpson and Ashland. This is the site we're talking about relocating it to. Gilbert Park is here. This is Emerson Square, which was recently built as an affordable housing development. And this is roadway/parking that was put through there. There is already a small park that was put together for Emerson Square that is more modern. But it would doing this option would acquire several property acquisitions, which we would have to implement in order to do this. So this was just intended to be an update. Right now, we are still gathering information from feedback from the meeting, but also from the community survey to see if there's an option that's clearly preferred by the community and also any other comments that they might have. We want to summarize that and come back to the City Council with recommendations at our first meeting in January. We had indicated in our original MOU that we were going to tell the school district which direction we were heading by January 1st, and so we want to stick to that timeline as closely as possible in order to respect their need to get their building under construction. But with that, that is basically the update. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you very much. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Burns.
Thank you, Laura, for that. Appreciate it. I just wanted to start, if you could go back to either the third and fourth option, just so the council also knows that those options would provide for a driveway, a protected kind of driveway in the middle.
So this
which I personally
driveway
appreciate.
here would allow, you are correct, council member, this would allow the drop-off points to be off of Simpson or any of the surrounding streets and would put them interior to the property, which would assist in the traffic circulation.
And then the last thing I just wanted to say, because media has a really important role in any community to kind of shape early public opinion. And so I just want to say there was a headline that came out in Evanston Now following the meeting on December 6th that said that the community center would double the cost of the new school, and that is not true. The district, put out a FAQ about this, but it would not. The two costs are not tied together. It's two different buildings, two different organizations, and so that was false. I had a conversation with Bill Smith about that I thought was successful, but I think it was unsuccessful. I think the headline remains. And then there was another headline at the roundtable that I think suggested that kind of the general consensus in the room was, oh, don't touch Fleetwood at all. And although that was definitely a concern that expressed, I don't think it was anywhere near the consensus in the room. I think people were genuinely open to all the concepts, knowing that the challenge that we're faced with is we're trying to fit yet another really big building on a relatively small development site and still preserve as much green space and mature trees as possible, which is like a no-win situation. Like we have to give up something, and so I think people were generally really open. We had several kind of breakout opportunities for people to talk one-on-one with everyone there and to look at the boards. And again, I don't think that, I know that was not the consensus, and I think the survey will reflect that. And that is all, Chair. Thank you.
Councilmember Nusma.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Laura, for your work on this. What an interesting problem to have to solve, and a good problem to have to solve, is how do we fit a brand new school onto this property and integrate it with the two operations that are already so active in the community on this block right here. So interesting challenge. It sounds like the kind of thing that you might study in architecture school or something and come up with 15 different proposals. But I would just like to officially go on a record sharing some comments I've made privately, that if we're going to consider doing something with Fleetwood Jourdain, I think it's in the best interests of Evanston taxpayers, whether they're writing the bill to the city or writing the bill to the school district, for the school district and the city to collaborate as much as we can. And I don't think we want to pay for two sets of everything: two parking lots, two gyms, two locker rooms, two kitchens, two boiler rooms, two mechanical systems, when we have two new facilities serving the same community with overlapping services. I really would like to look for ways to collaborate, and rather than having two brand new facilities next door to each other, somehow figure out a way to have one super awesome facility, or at least connect them in some way so that we can share facilities. I know you've had some conversations about that, and I guess it's challenging.
That was a lot of the discussions we have had, and there are somewhat limited opportunities in the building because we all need the facilities at the same time. Like, we all need the gyms right after school when they need them for sports, and we need them for after school programming. We need the kitchens during the day when we offer food programs, but they have to feed all their students. So there are some challenges. It is something we'll continue to look at. And I think on the outdoors, on the site, there's a lot of opportunities for collaboration, because that's actually where we have far less overlap in the needs.
Okay. And
May I ask a question?
To what extent has Family Focus been involved in this conversation?
They
have a lot of facilities.
They
I'm not
do.
sure what their utilization rate is like in their facility.
The Family Focus has been really great at meeting with us and coming forth with a lot of information. They have a surprising number of tenants in that building. It was actually pretty shocking to me, but a lot of them use smaller amounts of space. And so the building, they're only using about 50% of their building right now. But it is somewhat of a similar problem. Like, they need the gym during the after-school time period. We all overlap on the interior facilities. But I think that as we move forward, they will continue to be a partner that we have discussions with as we continue to develop this campus.
Thanks.
Councilmember Kelly.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I concur with Councilmember Nusba about the importance of that collaboration. Has there been discussion with the Parks and Rec Board about this, given that Fleetwood Jourdain is a Parks and Rec building? Has there been discussion, and if not, what are your plans to bring this forward and collaborate with the Parks and Rec Board?
Currently, there has not been a discussion with Parks and Rec Board because we have been focused on trying to have a number of meetings with Family Focus and the school district. And there hasn't really been time. I mean, this has been a very compressed schedule. And then we just had our first discussion with the members of the community last week. So it's really fast. But as we move forward, I think that there's definitely an opportunity to discuss it with the Parks and Rec Board. What really hasn't been entirely settled is if we were to reconstruct the community center, what exactly are the facilities that go in the community center? There's been a lot of discussion about different needs and programming that we would like to offer that we don't necessarily offer currently. And at that point, I am sure that the Parks and Rec Board would be a critical portion of that discussion to determine how we move forward with the building.
When do you have an idea as to when you might bring this forward for discussion with Parks and Rec? Like next month?
I think that our next public commentary or discussion is going to be with the City Council, the first meeting in January. And we have, since we aren't entirely sure what our recommendations are going to be or how we're moving forward, I don't have any idea about when the time we would come to Parks and Rec Board. I'm assuming the first half of next year, but probably sooner, but I can't really say.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, thank you very much. Obviously, this is a giant issue with a lot of ramifications, and we're looking forward, I think, to a lot more learning and a lot more discussion on this. But thank you very much for getting us started here.
Thank you.
This brings us to item SP2. Would someone care to make a motion on item SP2?
I will move, if there is consent, item and if you don't mind, Mayor, item SP2, SP3, SP4, SP5, SP6, SP7, 8, 9, 10, and that's it.
That's, if everyone's comfortable, that's fine with me. I was just want to name that there's an expectation that there will be amendments to item SP3, but if folks are comfortable including those amendments in a single discussion, that's certainly fine with me.
I'll also include item SP12 in that, skipping over item SP11.
Let's keep 12 separate.
Well, I think it's going to be handled in this.
I would recommend that we give everybody veto power over this kind of merging. So why don't you stick with 2 through 10?
All right.
And would it make sense to just do SP3 first?
I think so. But
all right. Well, then I just move item SP3. We can do the
second.
All right. Councilmember Reed moves passage of Ordinance 99-0-22. Councilmember Burns seconds. Is there any discussion? We begin with Councilmember Burns.
Kick it off. Thank you, Chair or Mayor. So I'm going to start off making an amendment for to increase the amount of the 2023 real estate transfer tax.
No, this is exactly what Councilmember Reed is.
Is this SB3?
So this is SB3. So I think you're talking specifically about.
Oh, should I
because
hold that one?
That would be an amendment to SP12, correct?
No. It's kind of different. We could probably just drop SB12.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
I will stop talking.
Okay.
And you should talk.
So First Amendment, increase the amount of 2023 real estate transfer tax being transferred into the reparations fund by $2 million, bringing the 2023 total to $3 million. The 2023 budget will be balanced with general reserve funds. The remaining $7 million would be paid over the following 7 years. I think I talked to most everybody here. It's the same $10 million we approved. We're just changing the schedule. We're moving $2 million up to be paid in 2023 so that we can satisfy our commitments to the ancestors. So we'll be able to pay out the $25,000 to all the ancestors, the who we designated as ancestors through the program, we'll be able to pay them the $25,000 restorative housing benefit next year.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Councilmember Burns moves to make the changes as described to the real estate transfer tax and the reparations fund. You all have received this in writing this afternoon. Councilmember Revelle seconds. Is there any discussion on this motion? I know that your light was on earlier. Is that for this? Councilmember Reed.
Yeah, I support this. Achieves what I was attempting to achieve with SP 12, which is getting $2 million into that fund this year to make sure that we're able to take care of our seniors. One thing that I do is Tashik here, or is Tashik online, or someone from the reparations committee? No. Okay. I do have a slight. So one, I think staff might need clarification. I spoke to Clayton a little bit earlier about, is this just from the real estate transfer tax dollars overall, or is it over the 1.5 increment like we did with the first million? I spoke to Councilman Burns. I think it's the full, it's the full, it's not the 1.5 increment. And then secondly, I do wonder if we need some, I have concerns that we won't be able to get all this money out this year based on difficulties that the committee's having with community partners. And so I wondered, I'd love for us to think through as we're making this commitment, how we can actually get this money out the door in 2023 and how we can build capacity either internally, or if maybe we need to spend some money to actually have folks assist us with the distribution. That's it.
Is there any further discussion on this amendment? Councilmember Newsmith, followed by Revelle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a question for City Attorney Cummings. Is Councilmember Burns' proposal legally sound?
Good evening, members of City Council, Clerk Mendoza, Mayor Biss, City Manager Stowe, Nick Cummings, Corporation Counsel. Councilmember Burns' proposal is what I've been advising the committee and the City Council. I think it's actually in the memo in SB 12. The City Council has sort of the latitude to direct however the city spends its money. And in this particular case, we're asking for the real estate transfer tax to be placed specifically in a specific fund. And I think that is the safest course of action rather than transferring money from the general fund.
Thank you.
Councilmember Revelle.
Well, I think Councilmember Reed's raised an interesting question, because that was a question that I had, I guess, at our last meeting about just how many of the grants can we realistically manage in 1 year's time. I guess this motion would say we are transferring that money into the reparations fund, so it would be there. So even if over the course of 2023 we weren't able to distribute all of it, it would be there as soon as we have the capacity to do that. That's about as far as I've gotten in thinking about how to handle that.
So,
Mr. Cummings?
So, since Ms. Kerr is not here, I will try and address that as best I can. And there were some public commenters that talked about the involvement of nonprofits in doing this work. The city doesn't have the capacity or the person power. We don't have a program coordinator. We don't have a lot of staff in our community development department to manage a program like this. So therefore, the city has contracted or has asked community SEPA, at least for now, to manage the program. There was an RFP placed to get a new partner. I believe it's going to be relet for 2023 because we didn't get enough responses. So hopefully with the new RFP and some other applicants, I know I personally have reached out to a minority-owned firm out of Chicago that I know that could possibly do the work for us. to try and bid on the work. Hopefully with that, we get some more applicants. We can have the ability to give out the remaining $3 million in grants, provided the city has the funding there. That is a real issue. There's a bottleneck that comes with, because, it's a nonprofit. They only have so much staff. We have 0 staff. They have a little more staff. And so that is an issue, but hopefully that will be solved in 2023.
No one is requesting to speak for the first time, so we go back to Councilmember Burns with 3:30 left.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the issue of capacity is being discussed at the committee level. Council Cummings described a bit of the process that we're in right now. And as part of that discussion, we've talked about potentially bringing on additional adding the amount of organizations that participate in helping us to manage the program. I want to clarify something, that the funds still remain in the city. And at least what the agreement has been with SEPA is that they're reimbursed after work is completed. And so I just want to make that clear. We've heard that from a few different comments today that the money shouldn't be held in a nonprofit, I think is what was suggested, and it's not. It's still held with the city. Whether or not it should be in some interest-bearing account is a whole nother discussion to have. But I just want to make sure folks know that it's not the money is not sitting in a nonprofit. But we are having that discussion about capacity. I think in that we'll think through potentially hiring somebody on the city staff, expanding the amount of organizations that we work with, or a combination of both of those things. So thank you, Chair.
There's still nobody new requesting to speak, so we'll go to Councilmember Reed with also 3:30 left.
Yeah, I just really would, and I also want to note that the nonprofits that we're partnering with aren't being compensated for the work. Is that's my understanding? So,
I think the contract with SEPA is like $10 a year.
Yeah. So they're barely being compensated, and I think that's a part of the difficulty here that we're finding with finding a community partner that can take on free work. I would love us to start partnering maybe with the Evanston Community Foundation, who has a substantial pocket of money there, to use some of those funds maybe to support the distribution. And I'll also note that direct cash payments, I know there's with the guaranteed income, it's not the easiest thing in the world, but is a lot less complicated than this. And so I think as we move forward with other discussions, we may find some efficiencies in looking at the program differently.
Councilmember Kelly.
Thank you. Yes, I support this. I think absolutely we want to ensure that the elders who applied and are recipients receive the compensation. I would just ask, going forward, for anything above and beyond this, could we get sort of a comprehensive report to council? I think that would be really helpful about impact, outcome, plans going forward. I think that would be very much welcomed. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm pretty sure the answer to that question is going to be yes from the Reparations Committee and others. So now that no one else is asked to speak for the first time, we'll go back to Councilmember Newsom with 4:50 left.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of questions. One, I suppose, is for Councilmember Reed. So in full context, if we were to approve this motion to kind of front load the real estate transfer tax with adding $2 million to this year, or to 2023, does that replace your resolution under SB 12, and that would be coming off the table?
Yeah, to me it meets the same goal. It gets the $2 million in there. We're going to have to take the $2 million that we're taking from the real estate transfer tax and replace that with reserve money anyhow, the hole that's created in the budget. So, I think this is...
So SB 12 would come off if we put this,
achieve the same goal.
Then my next question is for Mr. Desai. What impact would this have on our fund balance? Since we would essentially be drawing down on reserves to plug the hole.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. We have just a couple of new slides, I think, to summarize that fund balance scenario. And I just want the clarification about this $2 million. Is it still in line with the previous one? Or is it coming out of the general real estate transfer?
So as I read the amendment, as the chair who's accepted the amendment in writing, I believe this is from the entire real estate transfer tax revenue. That it would essentially change 3 years of the real estate transfer tax plan. For year one, it would increase the cap to $3 million and eliminate the $1.5 million threshold. And for years 9 and 10, it would eliminate it.
Okay.
Is that consistent with your intent?
And we did talk about this in touch too. I don't want to make folks think I didn't check in. It was the same conversation we talked about. Remember, I asked like, what was the pre-COVID revenue out of the real estate transfer tax? You said 3.5. So
Right.
we did talk about this.
Right.
I just wanted to make sure.
Okay, so this is how it looks like. You would see there are two columns, 23 budget, revenues on the first line, expense, use of reserves for additional pension contribution, which was approved at the introduction last time by the council of $4.4 million. So you would see the numbers, beginning fund balance as of 22. Again, these are estimates as 45 million. The operating deficit is 7.9 million for 23, so which would come out of the fund balance, leaving the fund balance as of 23 at 37.5 million, which would be at 29.5%. On the second column, you would see the only thing change is there are two additional items, line number 4 and 5, on transfer to reparations fund of $2 million, and the fifth one, the way the contracts negotiation, and I've already kind of touched on that subject in the past, that there could be an additional wage increase of $1.5 million. It could be 1.5, but this is like roughly 2.5% additional besides what we have budgeted. And if I put both those things, the fund balance projected at the end of 23 would be around $34 million, which would be at 26.3%.
Thank you. That answers the question.
Again, no one is requesting to speak for the first time, so we go back to Councilmember Revelle with 4 minutes and 15 seconds left.
For those of us at this end of the dais, it's very hard to see that chart. So could you email it to us? Thank you.
If you could even email it to those of us in the middle of the dais.
I can see it.
I've aged tremendously in the last year and a half, Chrissy. I see no further questions, so would the clerk please take the roll? This is just to be clear, on this specific amendment to SP3, there's more discussion coming on SP3.
Councilmember Nusma.
Aye.
Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
Councilmember Revelle.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
Councilmember Hedekaris.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
Councilmember Wood.
Aye.
With 8 voting in favor and none voting against, the motion passes. Further discussion on SP3, again, Councilmember Burns is recognized.
Yeah, so the next one, I would like to make an amendment that would allocate, I think it's $68,042 to Worksby, who we heard from briefly earlier, and they're here on the call with us to answer any questions. This is a executive kind of assistant solution for the council. This started off as a referral that I made several months ago now, prior to any formal budget discussions. So for those who forgot about that and feel this is kind of a late game discussion, this is something that I referred and that we've discussed previously. Why Worksby? I looked around at some of the virtual executive assistant solutions. Many of them have sprouted up during COVID. This one has been around probably the longest. They have virtual assistants that are located, in the U.S., which I thought was important, and then, reasonable pricing considering what I just said about point 2. Why virtual executive assistants? I think especially with this budget year, while we do have a surplus, we also there's still some things around pensions and the cost of increased salaries that still make me uncomfortable making long-term commitments. And so the idea here would be that we can sign, this will be a short-term commitment. Minimum we can sign a 6-month agreement with Worksby. Tops, it's a 1-year agreement with Worksby where we would receive a 10% discount. And the second reason is that we can outsourcing what I believe is a really difficult job to hire for right now in a very challenging job market. So I think we've heard from staff repeatedly that it is difficult to get these job postings out. It's difficult to get the interviews done. It's difficult to find qualified candidates. This is a challenging job market. And I think that's even more so the case for a job where, and I'll go through this in a minute, where, they're just helping mainly with email coordination and calendar coordination. I think it would be difficult to find somebody in this particular job market. Maybe as things improve, that wouldn't be the case, which is why, again, I'm really stressing that this is a short-term solution for us. I
just want to, your time is up, so if you could begin to close out.
Do you need to talk about this? Well, if you're going to use it, you're going to use it. You're going to use it? Okay. All right, so is it the whole thing or just about this issue? Oh, okay. And I guess I'll just leave it for, I'll say one last thing and I'll leave it for any questions. But again, I think this is being consistent with, my position around many different issues. Every amendment that I've brought up so far and that I will bring up has been a short-term commitment, a one-time contribution in 2023, which will still allow us to keep future costs in front of us. And I think just as a last point, Hitesh, if you wouldn't mind coming up to the podium just to answer one last question. And if we can put this number up, what is the assuming that we transfer the $2 million out of the real estate transfer tax to the reparations fund, what would be the general reserve balance in 2023?
It's around at 26%, which we showed you earlier in the.
So it's 26%, and what's the dollar amount?
The dollar amount is around $34 million.
Okay, so it's 26%, and how much money?
$34 million.
$34 million. And what was the goal that you had for us? We started off at 16, but your push goal was what?
We had proposed 20, but then we got the city council kind of feedback that let's stay at 16.66.
But your push goal, I thought, was closer to 18%.
Yeah, this year 18, over 3 years to 20%.
Okay, so it was, for this year though, it was 18, and we would end up at 26%, right? Okay, so I want folks to understand that this is a good year for us, and this is a one-time contribution just in 2023, which would then allow us to plan for future allocations. Thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Burns moves to allocate $68,042 in a separate line from the General Reserve Fund to Worksby, as described in an email received earlier this afternoon. Councilmember Reed seconds. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Reed with 2 minutes and 40 seconds left.
I had no time to share with you. I'll just add that I also support this. I think many of us understand the need for assistance, particularly in wards that have higher need. The 5th Ward, the 8th Ward have the largest minority populations, the largest rates of, or the highest rates of poverty in the city. And there's just great need in those 2 wards in particular. Historically, the 5th Ward even more so. So I think this is desperately needed for all of us to be better at communicating with residents and being able to expand our ability to do this work at a rate that is quite underpaid and maybe even underappreciated. Having this assistance is a good token, I think, to the work that we do.
Councilmember Kelly with 4.5 minutes left.
Thank you. Has there been any process regarding selecting or bringing forward firms? for this service?
No, as I said earlier, this is there weren't a ton of companies that do this. Many of them were new and popped up since COVID, and so this was I kind of listed the three things: been around the longest, virtual assistants located in the U.S., and then reasonable pricing, considering that second point.
Is that the end of your question, Councilmember?
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
Councilmember Nusma with 4 minutes left.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am going to reluctantly support this motion. Yeah, I really do think the best use of general fund is to hire somebody on staff to support all of council. I've had this conversation with Councilmember Burns. He knows where I'm coming from. I see this as an intermediate step, and what I would be looking for in the future is having staff support in place, somebody in the building. But I certainly understand
I
the
take
need.
reluctant support all the same. I appreciate that. Councilmember Newsom.
Councilmember Harris.
I agree, being the newest, trying to figure things out. Playing light tag, sorry. I agree that potentially this is what we need, and it will get us started in the right direction to be able to look at what serves the need of the council. So I too agree.
Seeing no further discussion, would the clerk please take the roll on this amendment?
Councilmember Nusma?
Aye.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Ravel?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Hadakaris?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly?
No.
Councilmember Harris? Councilmember Nguyen?
With 7 voting in favor and 1 voting against, the motion carries. And now, your time has expired, so
Right,
you're
so I
allowed
can't
to
even talk.
make a motion, and that'll be it.
I think the community members who spoke during public comment did a fine job. Right. So another amendment, last amendment for me is to make an amendment allocating $70,000 out of the 2023 budget that will go towards Shorefront Legacy.
Second.
Councilmember Burns moves to amend the budget to allocate $70,000 out of General Reserve Fund to Shorefront Legacy. It was Councilmember Harris, I believe, who seconded. Is there any discussion on this amendment? Seeing none, will the clerk please take the roll on this amendment?
I'm sorry. I just want to add one comment.
Councilmember Reed with 2 minutes left.
Yes, I'll be brief here, but I just want to. When we created Dino Day last time, I didn't get to speak then, and I just want to thank Shorefront and particularly Dino. I have learned a great deal about my own family's history and my own history and my family's place in Evanston because of the work that Dino has done, and Doria, who passed away, who is also a huge black historian here in Evanston. And I gained a passion for, or a deep interest in Alderman Jourdain because of spending hours down in doing research on reparations in Dino's old warehouse that was at the church down the street. Not warehouse, but I can't think of another word. Yeah, I've gained, my life is enriched because of the work that you've done and other folks that were part of it. So I really appreciate what you've done, and this is an extremely worthwhile investment. Thank you.
Councilmember Harris with 4 minutes and 45 seconds left.
I won't take that long. I just wanted to echo the sentiments. We are so appreciative. You have made Evanston a richer place. And to be such a humble person, it just exemplifies what we should be doing for our community with no expectation. He did the work. He helped put our city on the map, and I'm just so appreciative of that. Sorry to see you leaving, but you've left us in capable hands, I believe. So just want to let you know that we really do appreciate the work. Or I do. I can't speak for anybody else, but
I think on this one you probably can.
I speak for everybody else.
Seeing no further discussion, will the clerk please take the roll on this third amendment to SB 3?
And as a partner of,
Totally wrong.
No, not
Totally
roll
messed up.
vote.
That's on me and my chicken scratch up here. Councilmember Kelly, I apologize.
Thank you. Just a brief comment. I just want to say I'm really deeply appreciate the very meaningful work that Dino has done over the years in Evanston. And I want to say that I know if my father were here today, he worked with Dino and he would be so delighted with Dino's success. So that's all. Thank you.
Sorry, again, that was totally on me. Councilmember Kelly was in the queue, and I can't read my own handwriting. But now I believe everyone is seeking to speak has done so, and so would the clerk please now call the roll on this third amendment to SB 3?
Okay, thank you, Mayor. And I just want to briefly insert myself as well. I'm happy to be, our office be a partner with Shorefront, and happy to be taking these votes tonight as well. Councilmember Newsma?
Aye.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Ravel?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Hadakaris?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
Councilmember Wynn?
Aye.
With 8 voting in favor and none voting against, the motion passes and SB 3 is again amended. Is there any further discussion on SB 3, which has now been amended 3 times and is, I think, probably ready for a vote? Seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll on SB 3 as thrice amended?
Councilmember Newsma?
Aye.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Ravel?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Hadakaris?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
Councilmember Wynn?
Aye.
With 8 voting in favor and none voting against, the motion carries and ordinance 99-0-22 as amended is passed.
All right. I will move.
Councilmember Reed is recognized for a motion, hopefully of a bunch of special orders of business.
Yes, I will move items SB2, SB4, SB5, SB6, SB7, 8, 9, and 10.
Second.
Councilmember Reed moves passage of items SP 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Councilmember Newsma seconds. Is there any discussion? Seeing Councilmember Reed.
Yeah, I meant to highlight this during the budget, but we're approving the money to pay for the budget, so I'll just highlight it now. You know, I do think there's with our budget and some of the expenditures here, that there's a bit of sticker shock for folks that our budget is going from an average of about 290, 300 million for the last few years to now almost $400 million. And I just want to note that a good portion of that is the way that we are reporting income and expenditures from loans. And so I just want folks to be clear that our budget isn't ballooning as much as it seems like it's ballooning. It's really, I've talked to the finance team and deputy city manager a couple times about this, and the city manager, but it's the way that we report loan income, which is very different from the way folks might be used to it in their personal lives, that really makes the budget look almost, $50 or so million larger than what it really is. So I just wanted to highlight that for folks in the media.
Seeing no further discussion, would the clerk please take the roll on this motion that has, let's see if we can subtract properly, 8 special orders of business bundled into a single vote.
Councilmember Newsma?
Aye.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Ravel?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Hadakaris?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
Councilmember Wynn?
Aye.
With 8 voting in favor and none voting against, the motion carries, and the items in special orders of business 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 are all declared passed. This brings us to item SP 11. Would someone care to make a motion relative? Yep.
I will move. I'm going to move to table it, but I'm just going to move it for now and then move to table it. So I'm going to move item SP 11, ordinance 110-022, amending Title 9, Chapter 5 of the City Code.
Second.
Second.
Councilmember Reed moves passage of ordinance 110-0-22. Councilmember Burns seconds. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Reed.
Yeah, I'm gonna move to table this, but the police department and I and Councilmember Burns and Chief Stewart and Commander Glue and our law department met to go over the language revisions. We've settled in on most of it there as far as the language. It still achieves every goal that I wanted it to achieve, which is to decriminalize, but we're working on just to decriminalize possession, mere possession of cannabis in certain places and alcohol in others. But we're working to make sure that the language is in alignment with the state. There are a few amendments made, and we're also going to be considering reducing the fine. Currently, the fine is set at a minimum of $500, a maximum of $750, which is pretty high. Yes, I won't make any high jokes about cannabis. So yeah, I'm happy to table this and come back with an even more complete ordinance that achieves the goals. And I think I really appreciate some of the, I really appreciate all of the input from Commander Glue and Chief Stewart and our law department on this. I think it's even stronger language than I was proposing, and even clearer language, I think, and actually goes a little bit further than where I was going. So I'm really excited about this. So I move to table this until January 20th. Oh, sorry.
Second.
Oh, okay. Well, we can amend the typo offline. But there is a typo that Councilmember Revelle found. A missing word. Okay.
I'm sorry, Councilmember, what's the motion, though?
So I'm sorry. I move to table this until January 23rd. Or until our second meeting in January.
Second.
Councilmember Reed moves to table this item to January 3rd, 2023. Councilmember Nguyen seconds. Is there any discussion? Oh, it doesn't matter. It's a non-debatable motion, right?
No.
I learn. Slowly, but I learn. Will the clerk please take the roll on the motion to table?
Councilmember Nusma.
He stepped out.
We could do a voice vote.
Councilmember Burns. Councilmember Burns. Councilmember Revelle.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
Councilmember Hadakatis.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
Councilmember Nguyen.
Aye.
With 6 voting in favor and none voting against, the motion carries, and this item will appear on the January 23rd, 2023 City Council agenda. This concludes the special orders of business and brings us to the consent agenda. I've been told that item RE1 should be removed from the consent agenda. Are there other items that council members would like to see removed from the consent agenda?
A7.
A7.
R1 and R2.
R1 and R2. So far I have A7, R1, R2, and RE1.
That's it.
So we have A7, R1, R2, and RE1. Are there any other items?
Is someone from Economic Development here? Is Paul or Katie?
So my understanding is that Paul Zalmazak is available, though not currently on the Zoom. Just for those who may have been out of the room, so far we've seen A7, R1, R2, and RE1 removed from the consent agenda.
I have one question about E1.
I'm listening.
Yeah, I have one question about E1. I kind of don't want to pull it off, but
Is
I'll ask him to join.
I'm certainly happy to allow a question later without it pulled off, or you can pull it off as you prefer.
Which one are you talking about?
E1, I believe.
E1, yes. I don't want to say the name and summons the. Okay, I'm gonna leave it on and try to get my answer offline. Yeah.
So I'm sorry, is it being pulled? It's not, okay. So the items being pulled off are A7, R1, R2, and RE1. Would someone care to make a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move the consent agenda with the exception of items A7, R1, R2, and RE1, if I have that correct.
Second.
Councilmember Newsma moves for the passage of the consent agenda except for A7, R1, R2, and RE1. Councilmember Nguyen seconds. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, would the clerk please take the roll?
Councilmember Newsma.
Aye.
Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
Councilmember Ravel.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
Councilmember Hedakaris.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
Councilmember Nguyen.
Aye.
With 8 voting in favor and none voting against, the motion carries, and the consent agenda except for A7, R1, R2, and RE1 is passed. Would someone care to make a motion on item A7? I believe Councilmember Kelly is still chairing APW. Councilmember, would you care to make a motion?
I move the council pass A7, purchase of insurance renewals, property excess liability, and excess workers' compensation for fiscal year 2023.
Second.
Councilmember Nguyen moves passage of item A7, purchase of insurance / renewals. Councilmember Harris seconds. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Newsma.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. I will recuse myself from voting on this one as Gallagher is my wife's employer.
So noted. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk please take the roll?
Councilmember Newsma.
Abstain.
Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
Councilmember Ravel.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed. Councilmember Ravel. Hedakaris.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
Councilmember Nguyen.
Aye.
With 6 voting in favor and 1 abstention, the motion carries, and item A7 is declared passed. This brings us to item R1. Councilmember Hedakaris, would you care to make a motion here?
I make a motion to approve Resolution 85R22, amending City Council Rule 9.7.
I'd ask that we move both R1 and R2 conjointly, and then I will second that.
Sure. I will make a motion to move R1 Resolution 85R22, amending City Council Rule 9.7, and R2 Resolution 86R22, amending City Council Rule 9.103.
Second.
Councilmember Hedakaris moves passage of resolutions 85-R-22 and 86-R-22. Councilmember Newsma seconds. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Reed.
Yes. This has been tabled a few times, and I appreciate folks indulging those tablings in the past. We had our Rules Committee meeting a week ago, and it seems like we're still going to be coming back to the Rules Committee with amendments to the Referrals Committee process, or at least a rotation, a schedule, or some other small tweak potentially. I don't feel like there's an absolute rush on R1 and R2. I don't think there's something urgent that we're trying to account for here. at least not currently urgent. So I would respectfully ask that we continue to hold this off until until we make those revisions to the referrals committee. And that was the original point of the tabling, and we just haven't gotten there yet.
Councilmember Burns?
Just based on discussions I've had, I don't know if a hold or a table would even be successful today, nor do I know whether or not it would change anything. I think the one thing I still think about is if we can consider changing the name from sponsor to something else. Because correct me if I'm wrong, Mayor Bish, but I don't even think in our state legislature requires co-sponsors just to refer something, just to get something in the process. And I think to require that so early on, before we have an opportunity to deliberate as a body, before we have an opportunity to discuss, the data and the arguments collectively, that what it'll do is those headlines that say such and such has this idea will now say two others are co-sponsors of it at a time where they may support moving it forward, but not necessarily sponsoring it, right? But they don't mind moving it forward to have the discussion. And I think there's a strong possibility that this could really stifle good, worthy items for discussion. And I'm concerned about that. So I'll say at this late stage on this item, I hopefully we can find another word other than sponsor in this early stage, and that's all.
May I respond to that? So first of all, I've never been one to worry about words, and certainly I could happily support almost any family-friendly word rather than co-sponsor. But just for the purpose of answering your question about Springfield, in Springfield, nothing is guaranteed getting a hearing. In Springfield, something can have 100 co-sponsors, and if the Speaker of the House doesn't want it to get a hearing, it doesn't get a hearing. Now, that's a bad system that I don't believe we should emulate, but that is the status quo there. When I initially brought forth the suggestion, my suggestion was that we didn't require co-sponsors, that we said that things could be referred and get a hearing with no co-sponsors, but also as long as it had a couple co-sponsors, it was guaranteed a hearing. So that was, again, a much more kind of open and liberal way of handling business than they do in Springfield, which I think is appropriate and good. And then I think it was you actually who expanded it to say that everything would require multiple co-sponsors. So that extra bit about requiring multiple co-sponsors certainly is out of line with how it works in Springfield or Washington, whether or not we want to emulate those places. But that wasn't my suggestion. That was your suggestion.
Yeah, I think I'm talking about something different. So, I mean, it's kind of that. So the reason why I added that is because I don't think it should be up to three council members or two council members and the mayor to decide which ones that don't have the two co-sponsors move forward. And so that's why I said that. I would probably be fine removing that if I knew that there was going to be a schedule to appoint other members. But again, it just seems through the conversations I've had with this that there is this effort to, try to control not only how many people serve on the referrals committee, but who. And that makes me very uncomfortable. But if that's the way we're going to move forward, I don't agree with it, but I can't do anything about it. If that's what this council supports, then yeah, I don't think three select group of mayor and two council members should decide which ones go through, and so we should have just a hard and fast rule that requires it. That being said, again, I think my only amendment would be, and I tried to find another word to use. I think with enough time we can find it, but just not using co-sponsors, because again, that's not just to get it in the process in Springfield. It does not require that. Yes, because of the way their system works, the speaker has a lot of power, but you can still get it on an agenda, right, without needing a co-sponsor. A co-sponsor is just to show that it has some support so that by the time it reaches the discussion, the body knows where everybody is, but it doesn't require it. And so that's all I would add at this point, is just finding another more neutral way where we can indicate that council members are at least willing to move this forward so we can have further consideration of the item.
Councilmember Hadakaris.
Would something like working partners work instead of sponsor? Because that just means you've had an in-depth discussion and where you might not be 100 in total agreement of the language, be in the spirit of working towards yes. Just a thought.
Yeah, I think if we could pass it today with just the amendment that we'll come up with, I don't know how you want to do that, but I'm fine with what we have here. If we can have some more time, we could pass it today, but then afterwards, maybe even administratively or however we want to work it, we just come up with a way what to call it. And that might work. I just don't know.
No one is requesting to speak for the first time, so we go back to Councilmember Reed with 3:45 left.
So I like the idea of maybe changing the co-sponsor name. I would still like to table this so we can come up with a name for that, because that's not really how the legislative process works, that we pass something and then it just gets changed later. We have to have the amendment here, and I think by tabling it will give us that time and give us some time to find that word and to ponder other ways to make sure that we're not setting up a Springfield-esque system that limits the legislative abilities of members. So I would like to move to, again, I don't think there's an emergency here that we're looking at, some impending doom that we're trying to solve for. So I'd like to table this. I'd like to table this.
So is that a motion, first of all?
Yeah. I don't like having to say, well, just because our next Rules Committee meeting is in February. Sorry we couldn't get the January meeting, because it would have been nicer to just say table this until January, but and it's the first week of February, or Chair, or someone. First week of February is Rules Committee. So then our council meeting, our first meeting in February would be the week after that. So then whatever that is, the first meeting in February, I'd like to table this until.
Councilmember Reed moves to table these items to the February 13th regular meeting of the Evanston City Council. Is there a second?
I won't ask to table it anymore after that.
The motion fails for lack of a second. Seeing no further discussion, would the clerk please?
The only thing, based on what I said, do you think that needs an amendment, or just we're cool with, is everybody generally cool with coming up with other options for what we call it?
I agree with Councilmember Reed that we can't just do it, but we can, if there's an agreement on a word now, I would recommend making an amendment right now. And if you're not sure you're ready and you want to come back, even tomorrow, and I think we can, typically when this body's been called upon to make amendments that are just changing this word with that word, whether it's alderman with council member or what have you, we'd do it really quickly. And so we could either do it right now if you've got an answer that you're okay with, or do it as soon as you have one later.
Yeah, I'm fine either or. I mean, were you going to say something?
Did you get my light?
Sure didn't. Councilmember Nusma.
I've got thesaurus.com.
I tried, but I couldn't find anything. What you got?
Advocate, backer, benefactor, patron, promoter, underwriter, or supporter. Supporter might make the most sense. I think it's kind of silly. I'm happy with whatever word we choose.
I think supporter goes in the opposite direction of what I'm trying to achieve. I'll come back with, as long as everybody is generally open with.
How about friend?
With reconsidering it, because again, I don't think people are necessarily. I think someone could want to move something forward and feel like it's worth more. It's worthy of more discussion and more consideration, but doesn't necessarily want to tie themselves to it in the way that a co-sponsor does, right? And that no other body does that, where you're just like so early on, you have to tie yourself into it in order for it to even make its way on a referrals committee, or a rules committee or any other committee in the body. So that would be a stark deviation on what I've seen, how I've seen bodies operate. And so I'm saying if we want to do it, fine. Let's find another word that just says, look, I'm moving this along. I'm not necessarily tied to it, because then that'll be the headline, right? And that's going to scare folks. That's the stifling, is that Bill Smith is going to write, such and such and such and such and such and such, co-sponsor this. You may not be ready to tie yourself completely to it, but you think it's worthy of further discussion and consideration. And we shouldn't put ourselves in that bind. That's not good for this for our core responsibility, which is a legislative one. That's not good government. So let's change the word to we're just pushing it along for further discussion. I don't know what that word is yet. I'm more than happy to come back. I saw somebody in the audience say something. Maybe he has an idea, but I'm happy to come back with something though.
All right. Well, all of a sudden, the arrival of a thesaurus got everybody's lights on. So we'll start with Councilmember Nguyen and then go to those who've already spoken.
Well, what if we're really literal and it's a co-refer? I mean, it's not easy to say, but it's a co-refer.
That's in the right direction. Supporter wasn't, but co-refer that's in the right direction. Yeah, something more neutral where we're just pushing it along.
Would
to a discussion? I would be fine with that unless somebody has a better, in the moment, brainstorm idea.
Jonathan has his light on, so he might have another one.
So then in that case, the only person with a light on at this time is Councilmember Reed with 3 minutes and 45 seconds left.
Yeah, if we're going to move this forward and not table it, I think really all of the words are the same. I don't care what we call it. If certain blogs want to write about it in a certain way, they're going to write about it. And I think that's just a part of the legislative process. And I know, part of this, I mean, again, one of the most controversial things that has been referred this term, I think, were the amendments to the public nudity ordinance that were categorized as wanting to create topless beaches, which is the furthest from the truth. And I can tell you from personal experience, none of you want to experience a bunch of people thinking that you were pushing for topless beaches. You'll get mean phone calls and emails. But that's the legislative process sometimes, and that's why we're elected, to take steps to do what is right, even though when pushing for the right thing or for sensible changes, you're going to catch a lot of guff. And that's partially what we're here for. So I don't know if semantics really, change that, because if we call it co-sponsor, friend, whatever, again, the bloggers are going to write about it in that manner. I do think that if folks get two council members to co-sponsor, to push it along, whatever we call it, that there should be a guarantee that those items appear on an agenda in a timely fashion. And right now there isn't. There have been things that have been referred and have sat there for, a year and a half since we've been here. And so I'd like to amend this to set a timeline for items that have two co-sponsors to appear on an agenda. And I would say, a quarter makes sense for it to appear on an agenda.
Is that a motion?
Yep, and I'm going to type it and email it to you now, if there's a second.
So to help Councilmember Reed determine whether to do the typing, is there a second of that motion? So let me give a little background, because this is an enormous proposal in terms of, it's probably bigger process change than what's being amended.
Okay.
Right now, the referrals committee sends, all of you know this as chairs of committees, you'll get an email from Allison the day after, or the day of the referrals committee meets, saying, hey, the referrals committee sent this item to you and we recommend this time frame. And we do our best to recommend a time frame that makes sense, but it's not our choice. It's ultimately the choice of the chair. And sometimes we recommend a long time frame if we think that something's going to require a lot of work, and sometimes we recommend a not that long time frame, but it still doesn't appear on agenda for a while, either because the chair just is exercising their discretion, or sometimes staff will just say, listen, we don't have the bandwidth to do this thing justice, and so it's not going to be a productive discussion. And so the proposal is that anything that has those two co-referrers would be required to appear on a committee agenda within 3 months of the
referral.
3 months of the referral
by the committee.
3 months of the referral being made by the referrals committee.
This would be 3 people altogether.
3 people, so the initiator plus 2 friends, as Councilmember Revelle would say.
And if I can.
So let's first, is there a second to the motion?
So if I can make my case for why someone should second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Councilmember Harris.
Councilmember Harris seconds the motion.
Mr. Chair, just a quick question. Which rule?
9.7.
Well, I think we're not, I mean, we need to see this in writing. I think it's going to take a minute to write it, so he wanted to know if he had a second before embarking on that composition project. So now I think we can stand at ease for a moment while this is being drafted.
It's going to take 2 seconds. It's just one sentence. All right, I sent that to you, Mayor Bess. If you've received it, then I'm happy to continue.
I have not. Oh, there it is. So, I mean, this doesn't quite say where it would be.
9.7. It could go at the end of it anywhere, really.
So the motion, which has now been sent to all of you, has been made in writing by Councilmember Reed, has been seconded by Councilmember Harris. Is there any discussion on this motion? Councilmember Reed.
Yeah, my reasoning for this, if, again, if 3 council members are willing to, or 3 council members of the mayor, or I guess the city manager can also be, I'm sorry, can the city manager be a co-sponsor? Only city councilor or the mayor. If 3 of us agree on this, I mean, that's almost, you need 5 to pass most things. And so I think it would make sense that if there's that much willingness to have something discussed or to, move forward, that it should be heard in a timely fashion. And council members shouldn't, 3 of them shouldn't have to, kind of get pushed to the end of the line. I think there should be something, there should be some mechanism to ensure that these items are heard if you have to go through that effort to get it even referred to the referrals committee.
Is there any further discussion on this amendment? Seeing none, would the clerk please take the roll on the amendment to the initial motion?
Well, before we take a vote, I mean, I'll just withdraw because I know my colleagues well enough. I just wonder, is there a time frame that makes sense? Is it 3 months? Is it 6 months? Is there anything, just if 2 people co-sponsor something,
I guess I would, I see a light, I'll of course call on folks. I would just personally respond in 2 ways. One, I don't think the best way to get a good answer to this is by kind of an auction style negotiation as we work on it. I think this is a delicate question. I've been hesitant throughout these discussions to put a fixed timeline for everything. Obviously, there is some number, 100 years is fine, so it's 10 years. But I think if we put a fixed deadline that will start to feel meaningful to people, we run a real risk of a diminishment in the quality of the discussion and a diminishment in the preparation for the discussion on the part of staff. I hear frequently from staff just concerns about their being able to prepare complicated, difficult items in time to have the discussions be useful. And I think a hard and fast universal, time clock that goes off, irrespective of what time of year it is, what else is going on, and how complicated the issue is. I just think it runs a risk that we're going to have useless discussions that won't help the issues in question move forward. So that's my own view, but Councilmember Newsma is... okay.
If I may have the floor for 2 seconds, I'm going to withdraw this so we can,
I'm cool with that. Let's just see how this goes. Rules Committee will be meeting again.
Yeah, I'll withdraw the motion. I would just say again, for our only power here is legislative. And I get calls about all kinds of things that have nothing to do with legislation all the time, tickets and stuff. The only power that we have is legislative. And if 3 council members referring a single item can't get it on an agenda with enough information from staff in 6 months, then we have no power here, and we're just here to sign off on things that the staff puts forward. We're not in democracy. This would be feels very undemocratic to think that we can't get things on an agenda in a timely fashion. If we need more staff, we need more staff. But yeah, I'll end there, and I withdraw the motion.
The motion is withdrawn. Just to keep score here, the motions were all withdrawn, if I understand it properly. And so the motion before us is the motion to pass these 2 resolutions. Is that correct, Mr. Cummings?
And I just sent an amendment, Chair.
Sorry. I think there was an amendment to change from co-sponsor. I don't know if there was ever a vote on that.
Well, that motion was not made. That concept was floated, but I think Councilmember Burns perhaps just...
Yeah, I just sent that over.
And sorry,
I would like to make that amendment. And what I will come back with is a definition that I would like included in the rules for what that means to get to Councilman Reed's concerns. I think it's a better word than sponsored, but also we'll add hopefully with everyone's support, we'll add a clear definition that we can send along to residents who have future concerns about
What's
this.
the word?
Co-refer.
So Councilmember Burns moves to replace all instances of the word co-sponsor with the word co-refer, as should be arriving in your email shortly. Is there a second?
Oh, second.
Councilmember Wynn seconds.
You got to second your idea, right?
Is there any discussion on this
As long as there's no discussion.
amendment? Seeing none, will the clerk please take the roll?
Councilmember Newsma? Aye. Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Gravel?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Heracles?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
Councilmember Wynn?
Aye.
With 8 voting in favor and none voting against, the motion carries and the resolutions are amended. And now, seeing no further discussion, would the clerk please take the roll on the now amended with this one change package motion that includes both R1 and R2?
Councilmember Newsma?
Aye.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Ravel?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Heracles?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris? Kelly?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly? Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
Councilmember Wynn?
Aye.
With 8 voting in favor and none voting against, the motion carries, and resolutions 85-R-22 and 86-R-22 as amended are passed. This concludes our substantive action for the day and brings us to call of the wards. So my understanding, I don't know if you wanted to speak to this, Councilmember, my understanding is that there's been a request that we not have a motion this evening on RE1. Did you want to speak to that, Councilmember?
What is RE1?
$5 million.
Just to speak to it. Yeah, no, we've just decided, we've heard from the community. We've talked to the chair of the reparations committee, and I think understanding that we still need we still have projects that we need to support through ARPA, that it makes sense to withdraw this request for funds out of ARPA. And I think with the real estate transfer tax increase for reparations that we voted on and approved today, that addresses kind of the primary concern, which is trying to identify funds to support the remaining ancestors in the program.
Councilmember Reed?
Yeah, I think the appropriate action to take would be to either vote it down, vote it back to committee, or do something with it, but we can't have committees officially voting, sending something forward to us, and then we just ignore it. So I think we need to take some kind of action.
And just to be clear, you're making a statement of principle, not a statement of parliamentary procedure.
I'm making a statement of principle. I may also be making a statement of parliamentary procedure. I wasn't thinking of it in that light, but there was official action taken by a committee. It was voted on, approved by that committee, sent here.
I'm happy to make a motion to refer RE1 back to the reparations committee.
Is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Burns moves to refer item RE1 back to the reparations committee. Councilmember Reed seconds. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk please take the roll?
Councilmember, sorry, I'm looking for it. Councilmember Newsma?
Aye.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye. Aye.
Councilmember Ravel?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Heracariz?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
Councilmember Nguyen?
Aye.
With 8 voting in favor and none voting against, the motion carries and the item is referred back to the reparations committee. So that now does conclude our substantive agenda and brings us to call of the wards. Councilmember Newsma.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. January office hours are going to be Saturday, the 14th, 10 a.m. to noon at Capitol. And the January ward meeting will not be the first Tuesday of the month because that is January 2nd. A lot of folks are going to be out of town. So January ward meeting will be Thursday, the 12th, 7 p.m. at Robert Crown. And thank you to everybody who has participated in office hours and come out to ward meetings in the year 2022. Happy New Year and happy holidays to everybody. Looking forward to a productive 2023.
Councilmember Burns.
No report other than to just say I'm grateful for the support on the 3 amendments that I brought forward today for the budget amendment. Truly thankful and grateful for your collaboration. Thank you.
Councilmember Ravel.
This Thursday, December 15th, is going to be my next special topics meeting about the stadium project. We're going to be talking about event day management, including a report from Northwestern's traffic engineer about recommendations for parking and traffic for the proposed special events. 7 o'clock virtual.
Councilmember Reed.
No report other than just announcing the 8th Ward's next ward night will be January 26th at 6 p.m. And I believe we're going to have Chief Cook. I believe we're going to have Chief Stewart. We wouldn't have Chief Cook anymore. We're going to have Chief Stewart joining us for that meeting.
Councilmember Heracariz.
Just want to pass along a reminder to sign up for the 9th Ward newsletter. I also have an update from staff to sign up for parking alerts. We're now in winter and the snow season is coming. And the last announcement is that please look for me on Mastodon. I'm moving off Twitter. and you can find me at 9th Ward 1.
Councilmember Kelly.
Sorry, no report.
Councilmember Harris.
Just a couple things. I want to tell Councilmember Kelly, thank you so much for having me at your special meeting the other day. I appreciate Councilmember Bobby Burns allowing me to attend the tree lighting. That was amazing for the 5th Ward, and I look forward to enhancing the 2nd Ward at some point and things like that. I'm really disappointed that I missed the discussion last week with Family Focus and the 5th Ward School, but I had a family emergency, so I look forward to putting together and understanding the concerns of the constituents, as I was a 5th Ward student at the original King Lab, so I have I have an affinity for that. 2nd Ward Council meetings will be December 27th, and it will be virtual. And I can go ahead and mention the January 24th, and that also will be virtual. And as Councilmember Heracottis mentioned, please sign up for the 311. We're having parking issues in my ward. Please sign up for the 311 alerts. Thank you.
Councilmember Nguyen.
Happy holidays, everyone. Happy New Year.
I'll echo that. Happy holidays to all. Wishing everyone a restful and peace and safe and rejuvenating holiday. And with that, Councilmember Nusma is recognized to make a motion.
Pursuant to 5 Illinois compiled statutes 120/2A, I move that the City Council convene into executive session to discuss agenda items regarding collective negotiating, purchase or use of real property, and litigation. These agenda items are permitted subjects to be considered in executive session and are enumerated exceptions under the Open Meetings Act as set forth in 5 ILCS 120/2A, sections C2, C5, and C11.
Second.
Councilmember Nusma moves to the City Council move into an executive session to discuss the items just mentioned. Councilmember Nguyen seconds. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, would the clerk please take the roll?
Councilmember Nusma.
Aye.
Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
Councilmember Ravel.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
Councilmember Heracottis.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Councilmember Harris. Councilmember Nguyen.
With 8 voting in favor and none voting against, the motion carries. And at 9:25 p.m., the City Council